This is Grief and Grit, from heartache to high fives with a dash of sass. The podcast that turns the tables on traditional grief talks with a fresh, sassy spin. Listen in for candid conversations about the messy, awkward, and downright hilarious aspects of dealing with loss. Because sometimes the best way to cope is with a little laughter and a lot of grit.
Hi.
Hi there. How
Hey,
are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. Got your
Yeah.
cup of coffee?
You betcha. Iced coffee again.
Oh, it's so hot, I know. And hot tea for me because, South Africa, hot tea cools you down.
Of course.
Yeah.
One day you'll convince me, but I'm not there yet.
I'm going to let you try. You're going to have to try at some point.
Love it.
So,
Yeah,
yeah,
we're going to talk about social media and grief today.
I know. And that is it's a big one for me because Facebook was not really that. It was sort of happening when Mark passed away, and
Right.
so it became really forefront after that. And of course, you create a Facebook account and the kids and it's so funny because I look back now, you have these memories that pop up, and I look back and it'll say what I had said that day, like 15 years ago, 12 years ago, and it's like, oh my gosh, did I put that on Facebook? I'm so tired, I'm going to bed.
Right.
So, and I think from that, putting that
Yeah.
part of your life on Facebook just grew and grew. And literally now you can follow a person or someone you haven't seen in 40 years from school days and know exactly what their life is about,
Right. No,
from
it's nice.
children, from their jobs, because that's what it became. It became this platform for everyone to share. And yes, there's good in it, and
Right.
there's certainly bad in it.
Mhm.
And I think that's what we can discuss today, the pros and the cons of social media and how it's evolved and what it does for us in the world of grieving and loss.
Right. I love that. I mean, the reality is for those that use social media, I feel like we use social media and it just consumes so much of our time. And there are pros and cons to it. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like a con would be it's very triggering, especially Facebook, and we'll talk about Instagram and all the ones that have followed
Yeah.
Facebook, because they bring up these memories. They store, and me, I'm so technologically challenged
It's okay.
that I don't know where
where
I don't know where all these things are stored. But anyway, it'll be the day, and they'll bring up a memory from that time period, and it can be triggering in that it brings you've forgotten about a certain memory, and something has evolved since that memory happened, and it's not always a good thing. It's it can bring about sadness. It can bring about, oh God, I don't want to go back to that place ever.
Right.
So I think that it's a constant reminder of a life where we've lived and a life we're living now.
Right.
And it's intertwined in one. And I think that is so difficult for so many people because you don't necessarily always want to go back to the place that the memory is now popped up.
Right.
What do you do with that?
Yeah. And I feel like, I mean, as widows, and obviously I can't speak for you, Simone, but losing a spouse is so much about the present. It's the everyday.
Correct.
Yes, we have the past and we have the future as well. And I think we all know so much of the grief is about not having them presently and not having them in the future. But then these memories just bring up what was. And depending on where you are in your grief journey, or depending on the day of the week or the weather outside, it could be really comforting seeing that memory, or it can be really painful.
Correct.
And those can just be really significant triggers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And also, I think that social media presents perfect worlds.
Mhm.
And, where people have these perfect world where, everything looks so good and their kids and they've got their husbands and their wives
Mm.
and I don't believe that it's really like that.
Right.
And I think sometimes we get sucked into that and
Mhm.
it's like, well, my life's not like that. And how do I get that? And, I remember I have such a vivid memory when Mark had just passed away and I was driving the one day. I think I'd taken the kids to school or something. And I was driving home and I saw a woman with her dog watering her yard. And it was really I remember it being a beautiful day. The sun was shining, it was summer, the flowers were in full bloom, and there was this woman watering her garden, and her dog was standing by her. And I wanted to scream out to her, no, but it's not a good day. It's not a perfect day. I mean,
Right.
do you feel anything that's going on?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes social media is exactly that. It's this is a perfect family, or
Right.
she has a perfect life, and why don't I have that?
Yeah. No, it's the reminder of what we don't have, and I remember, after we lost our first pregnancy, baby announcements were so triggering for me
Mhm.
because we were supposed to have a happy baby
Yeah.
announcement. And I
Yeah.
remember after, when I got pregnant with Jack and then with Amelie, I didn't post on Facebook because I just, again, like, life happens and God willing, we were going to actually walk out of the hospital with a healthy baby. I didn't know that that was going to be the
Right.
case, and I was just really, really anxious about it. And I was also, because I had been through the experience, I was obviously hypersensitive to what others might have experienced, whether it was a
Exactly.
pregnancy loss, an infant loss. It just is so triggering. And after Jared died, it was similar, seeing these families of four on vacation and
Mhm.
just being at home, trying to sleep with my two kids in bed with me because they were too afraid to sleep in their own rooms, and
Right.
just the hell that I was experiencing in those moments. And now I'm posting the pictures of the three of us from our vacations.
Correct.
And, that's authentically me. But I also want people to see that it can be okay. You can still have fun, but no one knows what goes behind closed doors. And the closed door in this situation is kind of the screen. We don't
Yeah.
know what happens behind the
Oh,
screen.
100%.
So, so often it is this facade of this, perfect life, but that's never the case. Let's
That's
be
never the
honest.
case, not with anyone. And I think it applies to divorce people, and I imagine that being so painful because, you can be presented with a picture of, each spouse with a new partner and a whole new family, and that's got to be triggering as well and really, really tough to watch.
Absolutely.
So, but then on the other hand, a pro that I would say is, social media allows you to also be mindless.
Mhm.
And for all of you out there, and definitely for me, and I think I speak for Greer as well, when you're grieving and you're on this journey of loss, your mind is always going at 1,000,000 miles an hour. It's like, I've got to plan this and I've got to do that and I've got to get the kids ready or I've got to plan financially. There's always something. So for me, my downtime has become TikTok.
I
Yes,
love it.
I said
Which
it.
is funny because I don't even use TikTok. So I'm surprised.
So I finally caved and I got on TikTok. And let me tell you, it's fabulous because you can really decide what you want to see. And it's not people that you know, it's not worlds that it's not these families that you've grown up with or people that you know. So for me, TikTok, you can choose your categories. And my mindless passion has become, wait for it, lying in bed at night and watching over and over again people organizing their refrigerators or their kitchen cabinets, because that brings me so much joy and pleasure. Not to say that mine is anywhere close to what theirs are, but you can live vicariously through these people.
Absolutely. I am guilty of the same, but reels on Instagram.
All right.
I love looking at the kitchen goals and seeing what, I would love to have one day in, dreamland.
Yes.
But something that I also found, and I hate this term, but the death scroll, where you just keep scrolling and scrolling on Facebook or Instagram or whatever it is. And I would do that every night before bed. And, I would turn on the TV and I would start scrolling on my phone. And before you know it, it's like 2.5 hours had passed and I didn't even watch a show. I never even selected anything.
Exactly.
I had spent all the time on social media. And I don't know that that was good for me.
Right.
So what I've actually tried to do instead is I started reading books. Jared was an avid reader.
Okay.
So I actually made a goal to read 12 books a year. And before Jared died, I would maybe read one book a year, maybe. And I will tell you, this also includes like listening to audiobooks. And that has really helped me. I got myself a Kindle. And when I find that I start doing the death scroll, I stop myself, put the phone down, and I pick up the Kindle because reading is something that I do enjoy.
Yes.
And I want to do that more, kind of
Absolutely.
escape to whatever story I'm reading.
We have lost that. And that is an escape.
Yeah.
And that's a wonderful escape because that expands your imagination. You go you create these characters in your mind who you create. They're not put there for you.
Exactly.
So that is, and Instagram, and I think that I was watching a reel on, I think it was a Facebook reel, a comedian, and he was saying that if you look all the way back to like our grandparents, when you go to their homes and they bring out the photo albums, and it's like the memories of here was when we got married, and these are the pictures, and then it evolves. And if you had to say to our grandchildren one day, or our children's grandchildren one day, it would be, well, this is when I went to a restaurant and I ate spaghetti. This is a picture of my spaghetti bolognese. And oh, look, that's when I traveled, because that must be the wing of the airplane as we were taking off. And oh yeah, that's right. That was when I picked up a pen from the ground.
Right.
And that is so unfortunate, because those are the memories that our children are making, and the next generation. And I think social media has played a huge role in almost, well, I don't want to say destroying, because there are definitely pros to social media, but I think it has hampered the experience of, as you said, living in the moment and creating those memories.
It has. And, it kind of goes to one of the pros, I think, is going back to the mindless piece that you said, but your passions, we were people, we were humans before we lost our loved ones. And there were things that we liked, whether it was, looking for recipes, or I have been very interested in embroidery of all things. So I started following a bunch of people who do embroidery, and seeing all of that pop up in my feed, it gives me inspiration. It makes me smile at the things that these people are creating. And it reminds me of, oh yeah, I really want to learn how to do that. I want to, get back to the hobbies or find new ones. So, if you love fashion, make sure that you are interacting with those fashion blogger posts that you're seeing or the influencer posts that you're seeing. Because again, from an algorithm standpoint, the more you do those things, the more they'll pop up in your feed, and then the more positive it is.
Right.
And you're seeing the things that really make you happy.
Exactly. And I think that goes to finding communities as well.
Yes.
Very important to look for your community. And that's definitely a strength that social media has, because before social media, your community would be just the people who lived close to you in your neighborhood, people you went to school with. And social media has allowed that to expand worldwide. So you can be a widow in Atlanta, Georgia, and you connecting, and we hope that that's what we're doing here, connecting with a widow who could be living in France somewhere, in a remote village somewhere in France. And that's the beauty of social media. That's definitely the one aspect that is so great. But it's important to seek out the community that speaks to you and the community that gives you something, gives back to you.
Exactly. And there are so many niche groups out there. For instance, if your loved one died from a certain diagnosis, an illness, you can seek out groups for people who have lost others from that specific illness. So they know a lot of what you experienced. Maybe you were in a caregiver mode before you lost your loved one.
Right.
And really being able to connect. For me, I remember, again, when we lost the pregnancy, I actually found a few Facebook groups that were specific to women who had terminated for medical reasons. And that was a much better fit for me because there were a lot of groups out there that were specific to miscarriages, and my situation was different.
Right.
I wish it had been a miscarriage
Right.
at the end of the day. I mean, obviously, I wish it was a healthy baby,
Well, of
but
course.
it would have been a much easier and simple path for me personally had it been a miscarriage. Not to minimize that experience at all. It's gut wrenching. But when I found myself going to miscarriage groups, I felt a stigma where I didn't feel comfortable sharing my true story of how we lost the baby. And I had a lot of trauma from the actual procedure and going to the clinic. And, the fact that I had to do this and Jared wasn't even allowed back there with me and all of these things. So again, I think social media really does allow you to find those things that you can identify with the most. And that can change over time. After Jared died, I didn't really have a need for those groups anymore. I was looking more for widow groups, and not just widow groups, but widows with children. I mean, here I have these two little people that, I'm now the only one responsible for them, and I have to be able to support them and support myself.
Right.
So really being able to narrow down, use those search words, guys. And if you need help finding any, reach out to us. We can definitely help you find some groups that might be the right fit. And if they're not the right fit, exit the group and find another.
100%.
It's okay.
Yeah, that is key to, if a group that you are on Facebook with, in however it works, is not working for you, and you find yourself getting irritated every time you go on, or you get more sad every time you go on, just leave it. No one's going to judge you for leaving. And this journey of grief and loss is your own journey, and it's personal to everyone. You've got to find play. It's so easy for people to judge us, and people are judged.
Yes.
And it's like, oh, well, she's moving on far quicker than I am.
Right.
So they couldn't have had a happy marriage, or, she doesn't have the same challenge as I do. It's very easy to judge others' grief journey. And in groups that can happen, social media that can happen. So if that's not feeding you, and if you're not getting something from it, just leave.
Yeah.
Just don't be part of it. That's the beauty of being able to be online, of being able to be on a Facebook page, on Instagram. It's not like if you're sitting with a bunch of people in a room, much more difficult to get up and walk out.
Right.
This is easy. Click the button and you're gone.
Right.
And find the next best thing.
Exactly. And, we are so critical of one another instead of finding the common bond of grieving. In a bunch of the groups, as you mentioned, people move on from at different times in their
Correct.
journeys, and people grieve differently. Some people need to be alone through their grief process. Some people need to be with someone through their grieving process.
Correct.
And that's okay.
Mhm.
Whatever you need for your specific path, that's fine. Go seek it. But let's also try to give people the space to do what works for them and just recognize what doesn't work for us, and we're okay with it.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
the important thing.
Yeah.
That's the important thing.
Yeah.
So some tips for you,
Yeah.
that you're feeling overwhelmed, you've got
Mhm.
all this going on, you on Facebook, you're on Instagram, you're on Twitter, you're on TikTok, whatever it is that's not feeding you, just either erase it, minimize your time that you go on. You can have a dedicated time where you go on social media and you say, well, between the hours of 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock, that's when I'm going to scroll through my Facebook, scroll through Instagram, designate those specific times to you.
Absolutely. And mentally and emotionally, make sure that you're prepared during that time. If you're not, then don't log on.
Correct.
Do something else and find another time wherein you're in a better frame of mind
Exactly.
to do the scrolling.
I mean, you can either delete the app from your phone,
Mm-hmm.
or you can remove the notification from your phone so that every time there's a notification on Facebook, you don't get it. So you're not tempted to go on.
Exactly.
And that's also like an ebb and flow. For example, you cannot believe, Greer, how many times I've deleted Facebook off my phone, and it's like, okay, I am done. I never have to go on again.
Mhm.
And 3 days later, I'm like, well, let's just see what's happening in the world out there.
Right.
And of course, I love putting my stuff on Facebook. It's got less and less, I will admit, but when Bianca got married, I couldn't wait to post all the pictures of the wedding.
Yeah.
So that people can see that we're also living that charmed life.
Mm-hmm.
But going back to deleting off your app, I've taken it off, I've put it on.
Yeah.
When it's been right for me, I've stayed on it. When it's been wrong for me, I've taken it off. It's such a personal thing, but just know that those are options for you.
And it's amazing that you are able to know when you can take it off and when you can put it back on. There are some other options, y'all. I am an Apple person. I cannot speak to anything non-Apple, but on the iPhone, you can also set time limits for different categories, whether it's social media, or you can even set time limits for specific apps. So
Even I didn't
Facebook,
know that.
Instagram, TikTok. Yeah, so that's something that you can also take advantage of. And then there are other tools out there. I believe it's called Brick, if I got that right. Free plug for you guys. But it's actually something that you have to physically have the brick near your phone to be able to access certain things that you set up. And you can do that for social media. So let's say you left the brick downstairs and you're in your bed wanting to go on social media. If you really, really want to go on social media, you have to get out of bed and go downstairs and get that brick.
Wow.
So, there are some tools out there to really help people who kind of get lost in the social media abyss. Yeah.
Absolutely. And not to say that we have a Facebook page. and we have an
Right.
Instagram page.
Yes, follow us,
And
Grief and Grit Podcast.
Yeah, follow us, and there again, hopefully we will have things that are good resources for you,
Mhm.
things that you can relate to, things that connect you. And our hope here is to create a community, where we all feel connected, where we all going through something, but we feel supported, we feel connected. And I think that's a very important part of social media, is that feeling of connection, that feeling of community, as long as it stays within a healthy realm for you.
Absolutely. And lastly, we've talked about the pros and cons of social media, but we can't forget real connections. If you physically need a hug, social media is not going to do that for you.
Right.
So making sure that there are, at least one or two people in your world that that are special and can be there for you, that's critical. Human beings, we're social by nature. Even if we're introverts, we still need a person, especially when it comes to matters of the heart.
Exactly.
It's really, really hard to do any of this alone. So really make sure that you are able to do that and you're not isolating yourself too much by only looking to social media for support.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And self-care is a very important part of it as well.
Mhm.
Make sure that you're looking after yourself and nourishing your body, nourishing your mind, and finding the positives every single day. If you can find just one positive, and that could be just getting out of bed today, we're
Mhm.
proud of you, and you're on your way.
You did it. And if you need help, just contact us and we will help you find a positive. You got this. Okay. Well, I guess we'll chat soon.
We'll chat soon. And
Okay.
we'll speak to you all soon.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. If you love what you heard, please follow Grief and Grit and share our podcast with your friends and family.